I received a few requests to provide an update on my 7.25-inch gauge layout. So this video is supposed to provide that. And it's going to be pretty much the end of the project. Well, at least the end of the project for now, because I think I managed to do pretty much everything that I wanted. I have a few loose ends to tie up, but as far as I'm concerned, the layout is more or less done, including, you know, the rolling stock and some of the other enhancements to, you know, storing the locos and, you know, making sure that it's easy to charge them. And I guess you will understand what I mean when I show you the entire layout and see how the whole thing works. This is the main station that you most probably have seen from a lot of other videos, and that's the only place where I can actually store, let's say, 2 trains, not that I have 2 engines, but that was pretty much the only place in my garden where I could fit 2 parallel tracks. And still it is pretty much restricted, so you can see that there is like a bend here on one of the track, the other track is pretty much in a curve. And the whole thing is that this entire station is in a slope, and I don't have handbrakes on the cars yet, so it is not easy to store the cars. And when I'm using the engine, I have to make sure that I stop here in the curve, because then the friction in the wheels actually will stop the train from running down the track. And as you can see, I have a point there, and I also have a point there, and just behind this green tarp where the green gas loco is, there is probably about 1.5 meters of track where I can reverse, ideally, because I think it's just probably 10 centimeters short to fit my small loco and the driving trolley in it. So I have to do something about that. So there is like a sandpit for the kids behind there, which prevents me from going further, but that might go away soon. So that's the main station. I think it's, yeah, pretty much done. I have done all the painting, and as you can see, even the track here is a bit of a mismatch, because we have some profiled rails here, but then this point is just regular bar stock. So this is the other end of the station. Here you see the second point, and I just have enough clearance next to this bush, which I probably need to cut back a little bit more this summer, because it's growing quite a bit. And I also have to do something with this area, because I just basically, you know, cut the earth and the grass down here, and now weeds are growing here, and well, I'm missing the ballast at that and in this area, and also need to do something with the, I don't know, maybe add some sort of retaining wall just to make sure that this doesn't collapse any further. And of course, the biggest issue with this part of the track is that we have these 2 relatively sharp curves. I think it's about 3.5 meters in diameter, sorry, in radius. But the whole thing is on a quite a steep incline. I mean, my engine can negotiate with, let's say, 2 passengers and 1 or maybe 2 cars or 2 wagons, but that's pretty much it. But I have further space up here, so I think the idea would be just to add some more ballast here and then raise the track a little bit, so the incline is not that severe. Just to give some idea about the incline, so you can see here from, yeah, pretty much ground level, and also the view of the same from the other side. So this is where that I need to deal with. Oh, and it was so funny, because in the winter, when I had let's say the last running session, so the leaves were down, the rail was wet, and the train just couldn't negotiate this turn and also the incline. So the wheel was spinning, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get the train up this hill. And that includes my small engine and also the big green engine. Moving further up the track, everything is, you know, quite normal here, and this is one of my lesser tight curves, I think about 4.5 meters in radius, and I have some leftover ballast here that I can use to replenish wherever it was well, not washed away because everything is held by these plastic retaining walls, but wherever I need some excess ballast, I have some reserves here. Coming around the curve here, I do have some clearance issues with these bushes, and I never expected anything to run here when we planted those. So this has this main branch here, which is the closest. So I had some steel wires to keep this and push it against the fence here, trying to bend it back. Hopefully that's going to make a difference in a couple of years, so it will grow further that way and up, as opposed to into the loading cage this way. Moving along, we come to probably the longest straight section of the track, right next to the Gauge 1 station here. And that's the permanent, well, not permanent, but most shady part of the layout. So I think it's going to be quite nice in the summer. Maybe I can use to store the trains here if I don't need to take them back to the depot. But yeah, small kink here in the track, but otherwise this is, yeah, pretty much level. I mean, at least this section is level. And because we have moved out of the view from the garden, so this section has bar stock and also steel sleepers. So let's say it's less fancy than what we have seen on the station, where we have wooden sleepers. And following along the station, again, we have a longer straight section here that's also in a slight incline, and that goes into this long right turn or right curve next to the cherry tree. And also we have the Gauge 1 station, the back of the Gauge 1 station here. So that's yeah, I just need to keep an eye on the ivies so they don't grow too much into the track. And as you can see, the division between the ballast and the track, I have these plastic retaining walls all the way through, so that should keep the edges nice and clear, and also make it easier to cut the grass on that side, and then keep this one tidy with the leaf blower. Moving along, we have another straight section here, which also a start of a bigger incline going up, and next to the edge of my plot up to the depot. And on the other side I have the Gauge 1 track. I also need to keep an eye on this ivy because it keeps growing onto the track and also loosening up the ballast, which I have glued on to the concrete here. Nothing wrong with this one. When you are coming down, you just have to watch your speed because it gets quite quick. I think I need to do something with these joints as well, because there is a bit of a kink in the track here. And keeping this small strip between the edging and the fence weed free is a constant work. But my neighbor is also helping to do his part in the garden. And now we are passing by the second cherry tree, just enough space for me to crawl under. So we have another S-curve here. Again, fairly tight, similar to what we have seen on the other side. This area here where you see the pebbles, that's just been done. So this was grass area, but I just got tired of mowing this part of the garden all the time. So I decided that the grass needs to go. And we did some pebbles. Hopefully that's going to be fairly maintenance free. I will see how that works out in the future. This is the area just after the S-curve, so that's the S-curve finishes here, and that's the latest part of the layout, or the latest installment, and that was done probably maybe 2 months ago, I think. And I was really waiting for this one because I had the shed built, I think last October, November time. So before the winter started, I've just moved all the rolling stock in, and I just rolled them on basically the concrete and this grass tarp here. Of course, I haven't used them in the winter, so everything was just locked away and I was fine. But now in the spring, these two sets of these 2 points have arrived, and this black paint track work, and finally I have a connection between the main line and also the train shed. The only reason these are all painted black because when the whole track arrived, I wanted to make sure that I can paint it as soon as I can, so I don't paint over a lot of rust, because it was fairly clean metal, and I only happen to have black paint at home, so I've painted everything black. I'm going to get some brown paint, and I'm going to paint the sleepers brown. As you can see, it's all, I think it's 20 by 40 round, sorry, not round, but tube, square tubes, and the usual 10 by 20 bar stock on edge. That's the rail. And yeah, have some nice lever action. The points and the curves are pretty tight, but again, I'm only using this to store the trains, and in most cases I'm not even sitting on the trains when I'm reversing back into the shed, so the engine can handle these type of curves quite easily. Of course, this, well, just like the rest of the layout, this part and the shed is also on a slope, so if I let the engines go, they would just start running down the track. Of course, it's not going to run down here because the radius and the points and the curves are so tight that the engines and the cars and everything just stop here. But other than that, on the straight section, they would just roll down the layout. And that piece here, or that sort of straight, is an option for future expansion, which is basically going that way and then behind the house and into the front to the street side. Just like everywhere else in the layout, I was fairly restricted with how big I can build. I wanted to make sure that I have enough clearance here so I can crawl between the shed and the fence in case I need to make some repairs, or if I need to repaint it. Other than that, I also wanted to make sure that I leave enough space here for just for me to move around more easily, and just to have a decent space between the house and the shed. So I managed to do this, which is, I think, 350, so 3.5 meters, and then by 110 centimeters. So that's just barely enough to hold my stock. But at least I have some extension cord. I have a couple of switches here, so I have lights on both sides and a third light inside. And I was using regular roof tiles that I have left over from the house. So the whole structure is pretty lightweight because it's 6 by 6. That's 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters. The frames and the main structure, but then these tiles on the top probably weighed a few hundred kilos, so this is definitely not going anywhere, and at least I didn't have to pay for this, and I think they look quite decent. And I've also spent the money and the effort to install the gutters, which I haven't managed to move it back here next to the house as it usually is, so I just tied it next to the fence. But yeah, it works. I still need to do the finishing touches on the shed, mostly cover up the gap between the two barn doors, and also do something here at the bottom just to make sure there is not so much gap, and then maybe add something here so it channels the water out, so it doesn't let it flow straight down, but maybe something here. I'm not really sure. So, and because again this is on the slope, I just need these cinder blocks to keep the door shut, because otherwise they just swing out, as you will see quite soon. So that's the shed. It's not painted in the inside, and I just only painted it from the outside. Let's move in a little bit closer. Okay, I'm going to move in a little bit closer just in a few minutes, because otherwise you won't be able to see anything. It's just too light outside, even though the sun has gone behind the clouds. So 2 tracks, just enough clearance, maybe 5 centimeters on the side here, 5 centimeters in between the 2 tracks, the trains, and another 5 centimeters on the other side to clear the 2 tracks and also the shed. I've added these boards so it's more comfortable to walk inside. And by the way, the whole frame is just basically like a inverted U shape. because this area of the plot had some really basic and rudimentary concrete flooring. As you can see here, it's a little bit crumbly, but at least I didn't have to put a whole frame in, and the whole thing just rests on its own weight and seems to be doing fine. And because I said the whole thing is on the slope, I had to add these blocks so the trains don't run out of the shed. Okay, I think I'm going to freehand the rest of the video. So as you can see, this is how it looks on the inside. That's the one light that I have here, and you can see the frame like that. Of course, it extends on one side, and I have a vertical, I don't know how it's called, which is basically holding the roofs. And of course there are these rafters. I think that's the rafter. And the other thing is, yeah, and I added some OSB so I don't see the underside of the tiles. Added these two very simple windows. These were the cheapest windows that I can find in the local home improvement center. And I have the mains coming in just under the roof. I have two battery chargers that I bought in, it was either Aldi or Lidl. I can never remember which one. So I have the power cord, which I just plug in, and I am charging the two batteries separately. So I have the plugs installed here, which I can just plug into the loco, and then I put the charger into the mains, and then it starts charging when inside the shed. So it's quite nice and convenient. A quick view from the outside, and you can see this third rail here, and if I continue along, then theoretically I can put another S in here and continue along the house and hopefully get to the front of the garden. But definitely in a couple of years. I'm not going to do this year. So this is the entire layout. And if I walk you back, if I turn around, I have the points here. As I said, the S. And then the straight down. So this is a big slope going down. And some curves here to the left, going past the cherry tree, behind the Gauge 1 station. And then behind the Gauge 1 viaduct. And next to the other end of the property, going uphill now into the S curve, and then the station. Yep. And the playhouse. And if I follow this along, I'm not sure if I will be able to see, because that's the big green engine under the tarp where it stayed in the winter, and I have the buffers right there and some off-cut tracks. Actually here in these off-cuts we can see rail type number 1. So this is the 10 by 20 barge stock on edge, small strips of steel welded on and then screwed down to the wooden sleepers. So this is what we have in a few parts of the layout. So for example, if you look at this point, this was constructed in the same way. So we had this leftover wood that we could use for sleepers. And then here for almost the entire station, I have the rail profile, which Andrew has done. And it's very labor intensive, so I only have a few sections of these. Actually, this was something that he did for himself. And then because he realized that he is not going to have his own layout, I basically bought it from him. And this is 15 by 15 T, which has been ground down on a milling machine. So the entire height matches the 20 mil bar stock. And then on top of that, it's 5 by 5 round stock, and it's tack welded under here in a couple of places. And to make it really, really nice, even the sleepers have a little bit of milled slot for the rail to go in. So this is like the deluxe rail. And this section has proper frish plates, which I still need to add the second screws to. And the second point of the station was constructed the same way, with a profile track and the milled sleepers. And as we continue into the S-curve, then it changes to the simple bar stock rail, and the two are welded together here. So other places have this flexible rail joiner, which is, I mean flexible, I mean that it allows lateral movement of the two rails. So we have these plates welded on here, and it has a slot in here, and a screw is basically keeping this aligned. So vertically it is aligned, and it allows these two rails to move like that. And also there is a bit of a flat bar stock welded in here, so it keeps this rail head in the same height as the other one. Throughout the layout we have a mix of welded sections and also these joint sections as well. We added this joint section to basically allow thermal expansion and the rail to move, and I think every other one we just welded, because I figured this, you know, this track is probably not going to anywhere, so even if we weld maybe like 8 or 10 meters, that's going to be fine. And as you can see, this section uses rectangular tubes here for sleepers. But looking from the top, you can't, well, I mean, of course you can tell, but they look pretty much same as the wooden section. Except the fact that for some reason the black paint is coming off, and you can see the brown undercoat. So that's all there is to my layout update video. I'm not going to run any trains in this one, so you need to stay tuned to see some train actions in the future, and also see if I can finally finish this shed so it has proper locks instead of these cinder blocks. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.